If you're a human being, I'm sure you like feeling good. I would argue that probably 99%, if not 100% of the things that you do in your life are to feel good. You do things because you believe that they will make you feel good. They're going to lead you to happiness. And a core part of really understanding how do I feel good involves learning to relate to your inner world and emotions in a way that doesn't lead to unnecessary suffering, in a way that allows it to function smoothly and as it should. And of course, in our culture, we're never really taught a good education on how that actually works. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you how that actually works. So we hear a lot of ideas about this term emotional regulation. And this term regulation needs some more clarity. It really needs some more definition to it. So it means to control or direct according to rule, principle, or law. Another good definition is to adjust to a particular specification or requirement. Another good one is to adjust for accurate and proper functioning. So that's a good definition for the word regulation, although when it applies to emotional regulation, it's god-awful. Because emotions cannot really be controlled. Emotions can't really be directed, and they're not logical, they're not structured, they're not linear. This isn't how this kind of domain works. I know there's probably some of you that want to argue with me about emotions can't be controlled, but hear me out. The actual emotional energy that you experience when you begin to pay close attention to it is nothing more than a lot of fluctuating and vibrating sensations and flows of energy. And when you actually try and control it, you're basically taking some force, some flow of energy, and you're essentially restricting it. This is actually what's going to happen when you try and control it. And the very nature of it is to be unrestricted. It's to be spontaneous. It's to be chaotic. It's to be wild. And you're trying to pull all that out of its nature and replace it with predictability, structure, control. It doesn't work. That's just simply not how emotions work. So emotional regulation is the process of consciously experiencing emotions in a way that honors their natural flow without trying to control or suppress them. Now, what I really mean here by control is interference with them. This is a good synonym for control here, is just interference. There's a natural flow, there's a rhythm to it, and you're interfering with it. When it comes to your emotions, you have to learn to step back, to observe them, and to feel them fully, rather than trying to get your hands in there, twist them around, move them. This isn't like some sort of like feedback mechanism, right? This isn't some sort of like more left-brained logical style system where we're going to adjust it and then we're going to like tweak the calculations and it's going to give us this kind of result. This just isn't how this domain of life works. It's not linear, it's not structured, it's wild, chaotic, unstructured chaos. And you have to learn to embrace that. You have to learn to simply accept that and to become very familiar with that and feel safe with that, or else you're going to naturally start to repress your emotions. If you don't feel safe with these parts of yourself, you're going to avoid them, you're going to repress them, you're going to deny them. And then all this energy inside of you is going to manifest in a lot of unpredictable, strange ways in the forms of bad habits, reactivity, various forms of just being out of balance in your own life. So control here, when I'm talking about emotions and not control them, they can't be controlled. I'm not saying that you can't control your reaction. I'm not saying that if you experience, let's say, anger, this doesn't mean you go and you punch someone in the face. That's most definitely not what I'm saying. I'm saying the pure emotional energy of what you feel cannot be controlled. That's like trying to control the sensations that you're experiencing in your hand right now. When you try and control them, there's a contraction and a tension and an overall constriction that starts to happen. This is the ego. You have to let go of control. Your reaction, right? This is something that is more so, I'm just going to use the word you can control it. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go into too much depth about that one. But this is more so in your hands. Please don't punch anyone in the face if you're getting angry. That's not what I'm saying when I say you can control an emotion. I'm talking about the pure, energetic, subjective, sort of qualitative experience here. That energy, you can't control it. If you try to, it's just going to repress. And then it's going to come out in some other unexpected way. Moving on. Emotional regulation. This really involves just bringing awareness to feelings as they arise, because these emotions, they arise spontaneously in the moment. So basically, you're allowing them to be felt fully and without judgment. And this is hard because you judge yourself a lot. You actually judge all of these parts of you. There's parts of you that you really hate. You just blatantly hate them. You repress them, you deny them. When they arise, you react to them in a very sort of like instantaneous and unconscious way, and then that pushes them back into the shadow. So you have to kind of swallow this pill that on certain levels, you don't like yourself. You judge yourself. And if you say no, you don't judge yourself, this is really just, you're missing the depth of the problem here. You're not seeing the ways in which that you judge yourself and kind of repress these parts of yourself because you're lacking in awareness. It's kind of like this catch-22. When you don't have the awareness that you need, you kind of deny it, and that leads to a lack of the awareness that you need, and then it kind of goes around in circles. I think that's how to use the term catch-22, at least. I kind of forgot. So while remaining grounded in the body and being present in the moment, you can actually begin to regulate emotion. And I'm using quotations here for regulate because, like I said, the definitions before lead to this sort of overly mechanical way of conceptualizing about emotions, which is actually very wrong. It's a god-awful way of mapping out the actual experience that we have. Like I said, they're more wild, they're not mechanical, they're unstructured, they're not linear and structured, etc. I'm not going to go into any more detail about it. There's not really order to them. They're more chaos. So rather than trying to change or avoid emotions, emotional regulation is about creating space for them to move through us, recognizing that they are temporary and can be processed through acceptance and non-resistance. Letting go of control, not resisting the sensations. Right? When you do that, you'll notice that the energy in your body, the flow of sensations, starts to move naturally. It starts to move. When you try and control them, you resist them, you'll notice there's a tension that starts happening. There's a constricting force that actually starts to happen. When you're fighting against them and you don't accept them, there's a pushing away. There's an internal struggle here. And then your body starts to memorize this struggle. You start to replay it out subconsciously. This impacts your health, career, relationships, ability to grow yourself. This impacts your worldview, your perception of life, etc. This impacts your beliefs, etc. So regulation here really isn't about control. Regulation here is more about how do we foster the flow of sensation, the flow of energy. How do we allow it to just move as naturally as possible while interfering with it in the most minimal ways, trying to reduce interference or resistance with what's happening and just allow the natural currents of energy flow and sensation to just do their thing. And then just trusting that, just totally letting go and trusting that. And you'll notice that you start to open up, you start to feel good, you start to feel clear, you start to feel healthier, you start to just feel good. When you feel good, things work in your life a lot more than when you're constantly closed, repressed, etc. I don't have to go off too much on that point, I believe. So I want to outline some core principles here for how do I feel good in my life. These are very core principles that you absolutely need. There's not really any argument here. If you argue with me, I'm sorry, but you're not really getting it. So sorry if that's a bit too assertive for any of you. But awareness. Awareness meaning that you just kind of cultivate some consciousness of the emotion as it arises, applying actual attention to it, real-time attention to it, recognizing them in both mental and physical sensations without reacting impulsively, without reacting in a sort of mechanical way. Just an ability to observe without judgment. Moving on to the next point is non-judgment. Feeds right in, that the first point feeds right into the second, I mean. So accepting emotions as they are without making them positive or negative, like this should be happening, this shouldn't be happening. You're essentially just trying to reduce resistance and allow for more open, authentic experiences of emotion. That's it. Moving on is embodied presence, learning to actually stay grounded within the internal space of the body. If you want to get a bit of an idea for the internal space of the body, imagine that we had a line connecting each ear, right? One ear to the other, and it goes through your skull, through your brain, and connecting to the other ear essentially. Feel into that line, feel into that internal space within your head, right? And then you have to start to feel into that sense of internal space in your chest, hand, everywhere in your body essentially. And that's when you're really living from that space. That's embodied presence. A lot of people live on the surface of their body or totally just outside of it. They're not grounded in it whatsoever. And you have to really learn to be in the body, learning to live and exist safely within the body. Of course, the next point is just feeling emotions fully, allowing yourself to just experience the emotion without holding back. And you have an actual habit of always holding back. You don't want to experience certain ones. You push them away in very subtle ways too, subtle ways that you're not even aware of. I've been meditating for 7 years and I can watch very subtle ways that I can avoid something. And it's so subconscious that without actually practicing mindfulness meditation, you're not going to get it. You're not going to have that ability to catch yourself. You're just going to fundamentally lack the awareness to do so. Moving on is just letting go of control. Release the urge to manage, suppress, or fix emotions. Instead, trust that emotions can naturally flow through and resolve. I'm going to add another word, resolve themselves when giving the space to do so. Basically, they kind of self-liberate when you just allow them to exist, when you are able to just let go of control and apply a lot of these principles that I'm actually giving you. Non-interference, like we spoke about, don't interfere with the emotional experience. Let emotions flow through you without manipulation, trusting in the process and actually feeling it. Let go of some kind of end result. Let go of some kind of belief that I need to be feeling this way, I need to be feeling that way. This is what should be happening, this is what shouldn't be happening. Let go of all this bullshit. Just allow yourself to not interfere with your own experience. Another good point is surrender. Surrender to the emotional experience, allowing it to be present without trying to resist, change, or avoid it. You're seeing a pattern here by now, I bet. No resisting, no avoiding, no trying to change it artificially, allowing yourself to just experience the emotion as it wants to arise and then pass. And funny enough, when you actually cultivate all these principles, right, when you actually live by them, your consciousness starts to raise and you actually have more power to shape yourself up and shape up life in a way that actually really serves you and helps you to just feel a lot better. When you really aren't living by a lot of these principles, you're very fundamentally unconscious for the most part. You're living at a lower level of consciousness. Moving on is just self-compassion. So after you start to do a lot of this stuff, you can actually kind of start to open up your heart to a lot of your own internal world. Essentially, instead of criticizing yourself, you're able to kind of nurture yourself. I think that's one really good example. A lot of people, they have the inner critic. A lot of people don't even know they have an inner critic. I talk to people in my one-to-one coaching. They don't even know that their mind criticizes themselves. They don't even see a problem with it. Instead of, staying stuck in that for years and all the unnecessary suffering that it creates, you slowly begin to cultivate self-compassion over time. Long-term process here. Long-term process. Not 20, 40, 50 years, but a few years. To get a very genuine, deep self-compassion, 3 to 5 years, realistically. Integration is another good point. So you just kind of learn to acknowledge your actual needs as a human being. Learn to acknowledge your desires. Learn to actually begin to embrace the full spectrum of your experience, kind of balancing out your experience, balancing out your internal world, balancing out your external world, making sure your environment works for you, making sure that your internal world actually has the awareness that it needs in order to function properly, right? And you kind of just use this information to integrate the emotional energy into your personal growth. You use this information of integration to just allow your own emotional energy to actually work for you rather than always against you. And not even just your emotional energy, but the kind of psychological mechanisms you have in relation to a lot of these feelings, like resistance or a lot of the stuff I was previously talking about for the most part. So mindful expression as well, right? So feeling emotions is very important, but there's going to be moments where outward expression is actually needed. You don't want to get overly focused on the internal world, although, spend a lot of time there. You also want to learn how to communicate emotions clearly and constructively when appropriate. You basically really want to learn how to listen to the sensations of your body and emotions when they're pulling you to act outwardly. Like they'll pull you to set a boundary or to be assertive. They'll pull you to actually behave in a certain way, not in a sort of like emotional reactivity way, but in a way where it's very integrated and genuinely intelligent, where the left brain, the right brain, this stuff works synergistically. You're more whole within yourself. Moving on is acceptance of impermanence, right? A core aspect of this is noticing the impermanence of the sensations and emotions of the body, the arising and passing, and just it's constantly happening like really fast. If you start to just pay attention to the actual sensations of your body and you don't take my word for it and just believe me on blind faith, notice how fast these sensations are just changing, arising and passing, right? Like there's this complex array of sensation that you can just pay attention to. Right? So noticing just the pure impermanence of that and embracing their transient nature can make it easier to stay present rather than clinging to emotions, feelings, sensations, or just resisting some. So clinging onto emotions that you like and pushing away feelings that you don't like. Instead, notice the impermanence of it all. Allow it to kind of just arise and pass and do its sort of dance for the most part. Lastly is just adaptability, recognizing that different emotional experiences may require different approaches. Some emotions need more active engagement, while others simply just need space. So we're kind of balancing our internal world with our external world here, right? Emotions and all this kind of work isn't just internal, but it all kind of comes together to balance out the external. Again, when you're really in tune with yourself and in harmony with yourself, your body will let you know when to set a boundary, when something's draining you, when you feel exhausted, right? So just learning to attune to yourself and getting familiar with that over a long-term, period of time, and really practicing this stuff is how you get good at exactly what I just said, and even just detecting when your body's kind of telling you to set a boundary or when you're being too closed, etc. Your body's a highly intelligent system. Learn to live within it. Learn to befriend it rather than being so disassociated from it, so disconnected from it and viewing it as like a stupid hunk of meat. Bullshit. Your body is way smarter than the majority of the thoughts that you even have in your head. Your body is so magnificent and beautiful. A lot of people don't even understand how deeply intelligent their body actually is because they don't read enough books on it, maybe like the practice of embodying emotions, trauma in the unbound body, aligned, relaxed, resilient, bioenergetics, things like this. And then they don't practice meditation. They don't go on meditation retreats. They're ignorant of how fundamental this understanding of the body is for really living a life of well-being and clarity within yourself and even in the external world. So that's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.